Hi everyone. So in this example, I will talk about a very important concept called game loop. Okay, and we will see what it is and how we can implement it. Okay. Now suppose you want to make a game in which you want this box to oscillate between, let's say, left and the right boundary. You want this to move it like this. So what will happen? Okay, so game will have different stages. One is the initial screen. Okay, this is like the initial screen where you will initialize different objects in the game. Okay, the very next step would be to draw these objects on the screen. Okay, and once you have drawn these objects, and with the very next time step you have to update the position of the objects. Okay, maybe this is at X, and at the very next time step you might ask, okay, this should move 10 pixels in the right direction, and this will go on. Okay, so you will have draw followed by update, and then you will again draw. So this is going to be a loop, and unless the game is not over. Okay, so unless the game is not over, so you will have initial screen or a initial stage where you will initialize different functions or different objects. Then you will call a draw function whose objective is to draw various objects on the screen. Then you will have a update function, and this is going to be a infinite loop unless the game is not over. Okay, so unless the game is not over. So we are going to see how do we set up this in JavaScript, and that's going to be a very common practice for most of the games. Okay, so that's what we are going to do. So for all the games where you have like frequent changes in the UI. Okay, maybe for some games like a puzzle game, you have to first click a button, then something will happen. But for other games where you have continuous updates on the game screen, you will need a game loop. Okay, so this is what a game loop is going to do. So we'll make a draw function, we will make a update function, and we will have something that is going to call these two functions repeatedly. Okay, so that's what we need to do. So we need to repeat these functions for a long time. Okay, so let's see how we can implement a game loop in JavaScript. Okay, so let's do one thing. Okay, so this part of the code is there. Let me create a object called, let's say, rectangle, and that now has a x coordinate, that's 20. That now has a y coordinate, that's 20, and that has some width, let's say 40. That has some height, let's say 40. Okay, and I can use this method like this, pen dot fill rectangle, and here I can say rect dot x, rect dot y, rect dot w, and rect dot h. Okay, so this is the same code that we have till now, but now we want that this rectangle to oscillate between the left and the right boundary. Okay, so what we will do, okay, so let's make a function called init. Okay, let's make a function called draw. Let's make a function called update. Function update, and let's call a function called a game loop. Okay, so game loop is going to enclose these two functions, draw function and an update function. Okay, and what I will do, I will put this code inside the init function. Okay, so this code will go inside the init function because this is something that we have to do only once. I will put this code also inside the init function. Rectangle will also go inside the init function because I'm creating this object only once, and this fill style and fill rectangle function should go in the draw function, but we can just put it later on as well. Okay, so let's just comment out this code as of now, and let's say we have a draw function, update function, and a game loop, and we want this game loop function to be called again and again. Okay, so if I just call the init function once and then I call the game loop function once, so that would mean we are just making one function call to draw and one function call to update. And maybe you do something here, you do console.log that you are in draw, and you can do console.log you are in update. Okay, and maybe you do one function called console.log here that you are in init function. Okay, so let's try to run this, and you won't see the square because we have not drawn it. And you can see the init function got called, the draw function got called, and update function got called, but only once. So our task is that init function should be called only once, but this game loop function should be called again and again. So for that we have a special function that's there in JavaScript. It's called set interval. So you specify that, okay, I have to call this particular function after every 100 milliseconds. Okay, let's say the function is game loop, and let's call it after every 100 milliseconds. So if I do inspect element now, you will see the draw and the update functions are getting called again and again. And if I just comment this thing out now, and if I say, okay, console.log in game loop, let's see how many times this function is getting called. And let me reload the page, and you can see this number here. Okay, so this actually shows you that this is the number of times that you're getting this output on the screen. Okay, so that means this function is getting called continuously, and this is actually what a game loop is. So what we will do, we will exploit this property of game loop, that it is getting called again and again, to make some changes on the screen. Okay, so what we will do, we will draw the rectangle on the screen. Okay, so let's draw the rectangle on the screen continuously, and we will also update the coordinates of the rectangle. Okay, so let's say we also define a property called speed. Let's say speed is 10, and in update I can say, okay, let's change the x coordinate of the rectangle by its speed. So rectangle dot x plus equals to rectangle dot speed. If I do this, let's see what happens. Okay, let's see if there is some error. Pen is not defined. Okay, okay, pen is not defined. Right, at this point pen is not defined. Okay, we should move this line here. Okay, yeah, now you can see what is happening. Okay, so now the behavior is not the one we expected. So we had a rectangle here, next time we draw the rectangle here, and next time we draw the rectangle here. So that's why it is looking like this. So ideally what we should do, we should erase the previous window, previous screen, and then we should draw on the canvas again. Okay, so what we are seeing here is, on the previous output we are again drawing the new coordinates of the rectangle. Okay, so for that the pen has a special function to erase everything or erase a rectangular box. So there is a function called clear rectangle. Let me show you. So if I do go here, and if I do pen dot clear rectangle, and let's say from 0,0 I want to clear the entire canvas. Okay, that will clear everything. Okay, so you can see we are able to clear everything. So that we should write in the draw function. So let me say clear rectangle from 0,0 to the width and the height. Let's say w and the h. Okay, so w and the h. Let's try to run this code now. So you can see this rectangle is moving in the rightmost direction. So let's also do one thing. If we see the x coordinate of the rectangle has crossed the rightmost boundary, okay, so that means if rectangular dot x is greater than width minus whatever is the thickness of this particular box, that is w, okay, I should change the direction of the speed. I should make the speed as negative. So I can say rectangle dot speed star equals to -1. So if the velocity is +5, then I say okay, make the velocity as -5. Okay, so if it collides with this boundary, it comes back. And similarly, I should put a condition at this point also, that or I think if rectangle dot x tries to become less than 0, then the speed should become a negative. So negative of negative will make it as positive. Okay, so let me say speed is 20, and let's try to run our code. Okay, so you can see there is a box and it is now oscillating between two boundaries, and this is like a simple very simple game. Okay, so you have a box object and it is oscillating between two boundaries. Okay, so we have set interval, we have used set interval to create a game loop. And okay, let me call it as var f equal to this. And now suppose if I want to stop this movement, at this particular point, then I have a function called clear interval, and I can say f. So that will actually break the infinite loop. Okay, so maybe you can put a certain condition that if the game is over, you can make a call to clear interval, and that will stop the game screen and you will come out of the infinite loop. So it's written like this, clear interval f. Okay, but this should be based upon a certain condition, like if let's say game is over, if game over is true, only then you should do this. So let me say initially game is not over, so let's say game over is false. Okay, and all those variables where I'm not using the var keyword, they are like global variables, they can be used from different functions as well. Okay, so let's try to run this code, and if I say inspect, I go to inspect, and here I write game over equals to true. But okay, this will not stop the loop, right? So we actually have to check for this inside the game loop only. Okay, so let's write it here. If game over is true, then we can clear the interval f. Let's try to run it again. I say game over equals to true. So that in the game loop, it's checked the state of the variable called game over. Once it is true, the game loop got stopped. Okay, so I think that's good for the basics, and I hope you understood the concept of a game loop. And now we are ready to write our first game from the next video. So thanks a lot. See you guys in the next part.